Good day to all of you. Today, we will be working on the 76th lesson in our lesson series. First, click on the plus mark at the top of the screen and open a new tab. Next, type thunkable.com in the address bar and click the enter button. You have now entered the Thunkable website. Click the login button at the top corner and log into your Thunkable account. Now again, click on the plus mark at the top corner of the screen, open another tab and visit the dpcode.lk website. Click on lesson number 314. Click the Start Project button here. Now you have entered the project. So my little friends, do you have any siblings who go to preschool or study in grade 1 and 2? So today we are going to make a very attractive app that will help them learn the English alphabet. You would also like this a lot, right? So let's begin. First, let's design the app as required. I will select the screen first and click the rename button in properties and rename it as alphabet. Okay, next I will add two labels to the screen. First, let's drag a label from user interface in add components into the screen like this. Let me give the text of the label as choose any letter to learn. Okay. Now you need to add another label above this label. Again, I will drag a label from user interface in add components like this. Let's give the text as alphabets and change the font size to 50. Okay, next let's add a row below this label. In this way, I will drag a row from layout in add components into the screen. The row has got added at the top of the screen. Let's drag the row down from the box showing components like this. Okay, next let's add a column into this row. I will drag a column from layout in add components into the row. Now you need to add buttons to this column. I will drag a button from user interface in add components into the column like this. Give the text of the button as capital A and simple A. Let's change the border radius to 0. Okay, now we need to add 6 more buttons like this in this column. For that, we can duplicate this button. I will select button 1 and click the duplicate button in front of the rename button in the properties. Now you can see another image got added as button 2 below button 1. We will select this button and give capital B and simple B for the text. Also change the border radius to 0. Let's duplicate button 2 once again. Here too, give capital C, simple C for the text and give border radius as 0. Okay, 4 more buttons are required. Let's duplicate the button 4 more times in this way. Okay, now in button 4, let's give the text as capital D and simple D, button 5 as capital E and simple E, button 6 as capital and simple F, and capital G and simple G. Also, let's change the border radius of these buttons to 0. Let's change the background color of these buttons. Leave the first button like this. In the next button, let's change the text color to blue and the background color to white. Change the background color of the button where the letter D is displayed to white and the font color to blue. Let's change the background color to white and the font color to blue in the next button where the letter F is there. Okay, now you need to add 3 more columns to this row. For that, let's duplicate this column. I will select column 1 and duplicate this column once. Let's duplicate it again. Let's duplicate the column 1 more time in the same way. Okay, now 4 columns have got added as required. Next is to change the text of these buttons as we require. Select the first button in the second column and give the text as capital H, simple H. Give the text of the next button as capital I, simple I, the next button as capital J, simple J, the fourth button capital K, simple K, the fifth button capital L, simple L, the sixth button capital M, simple M, the seventh button capital N, simple N. Likewise, the text of these buttons will change. Now, let's select each of these buttons again and set the border radius to 0. Now, let's go to the next column. I will delete the button at the end of this column. Let's give the text of the first button as capital and simple O, the text of the next button as capital and simple P, the next button as capital and simple Q, the fourth button as capital and simple R, and the fifth button as capital and simple S, and the last button as capital and simple T. I will change the text of these buttons. Let's select each button and set the border radius as 0. There is 1 more column left. Let's prepare this column as before. I will delete the button at the end of this column as well. Let's give the text of the first button as capital and simple U, the text of the next button as capital and simple V, the next button capital and simple W, the fourth button as capital and simple X, the fifth button as capital and simple Y, and the last button as capital and simple Z. I will change the text of these buttons. Next, let's select each of these buttons and set the border radius to 0. Okay, now we have finished creating the first screen. Next, we need to create separate screens for each letter of the alphabet. Now let's go to the screen. I will click on the plus mark in front of the alphabet screen and add a new blank screen. Let's rename this screen as A. Okay, I am now adding a button to this screen. I will drag another button from user interface in add components into the screen like this. Let's rename this button as button next one. Give the text of the button as next. Let's change the border radius to 0. Okay, now let's add an image above this button. I will drag an image from image in add components into this screen. Let's give absolute size for the height and width of this image and set the value as 250. Select the AAA.jpg as the picture. Okay, next you need to add another button above this image. Again, I will drag a button from user interface in add components into the screen like this. Let's rename this button as button home 1. Give the text of the button as home. Let's select red color for the background color of the button. Let's change the border radius to 0. Next, here, let's add a text-to-speech component from under voice. We have now finished designing the screen for letter A. Let's design the screen for letter B in the same way. I will click on the plus mark in front of the screen A and again, as before, add a new blank screen. Let's rename this screen to B. Okay, I'm going to add a button to this screen. I will drag a button from user interface in add components into the screen like this. Let's rename this button as button next to. Give the text of the button as next. Let's change the border radius to 0. Okay, next, let's add an image above this button. I will drag an image from image in add components into this screen. Let's give absolute size for the height and width of the image and set the value as 250. Let's select bbb.jpg image for the picture. Okay, next you need to add another button above this image. Again, I will drag a button from user interface in add components into this screen. Let's rename this button as button back 2. Let's give the text of this button as back. Let's change the border radius to 0 as before. Okay, now we have finished designing 3 screens of the app. Let's create the code for this and learn how to design the rest of the screen in the next lesson. You little ones are very successful if you made it to this point. WhatsApp your design to me on the phone number note 7681252244. Tell your friends about the design. Check out this app to send to me as well as to your friends. And one more thing, join the DP Coding School Telegram group. Try to be the DP Code Champ Best of the Week once every week. Stay connected with us. Also, another thing, join our DP Coding Club and now you can start a DP Coding Club in your school as well. We are ready to give you all the guidance so that if you are interested in starting a DP Coding Club in any school that has computer labs, please send a request to the principal of your school to the email address info@dpcc.lk. Okay, let's meet with another interesting lesson through DP Coding School. Have a good day.